This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, hello there and welcome. I'm Jim Ervin, and this is Time Signatures. There have been precious few opportunities for me to simply kick back and enjoy a program because I had a solid hold on the topic and or the person that I was about to be interviewing. Well, today's guest is best known as a champion of the blues. He has conducted extensive interviews with the late, great, legendary B.B. King. He was a founding program director and lead DJ for Sirius XM's B.B. King's Bluesville. He has served on the board of directors at the Blues Foundation as chairperson. Now, I know there's a lot more I could list here. I just want to hear the stories directly from the man himself and dig in here. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you all to the one and only Bill Wax. Welcome to Time Signatures. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Jim. I'm not sure I recognize the person you just described, but I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Well, it's kind of hard to decide where to begin with this. So what I'd like to do is a general icebreaker here. Talk about your earliest memories of music, Bill.
Oh, well, you were talking about, I'm 77. So
Okay.
for me, the very first music I ever heard was just whatever came over the radio. And I suspect the first song I could remember, if I had to identify a particular tune, would be like 1954, maybe 1953, and Patti Page singing How Much Is That Doggy in the Window?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't something I totally loved, but I was just a little kid. I mean, in Tyken, so I didn't know there was how much was out there and what was out there. So that's probably the first song I remember.
Okay.
But very quickly, popular music, whether it became rock and roll or rhythm and blues, or even blues, although blues was a little later, was my place to escape. The music, for whatever reason, the music very much spoke to me. My body, whatever was inside me, lined up. I'm not a musician. I can't sing. It has nothing to do with that part of it. It was just appreciation of what I was hearing. It was an escape. I had issues between myself and my father and things going on, so I could go to my room and turn on my transistor radio, and I could let some of that be forgotten because I could get lost in the music. If I heard songs I liked, I would seek them out almost religiously to be able to hear them again and again and again. So I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. And so on the radio, besides the usual top 40 white stations, there were 3 fabulous black music stations in Washington, D.C., and another 2 coming from Baltimore. So I quickly was attracted to what I was hearing on those stations, and that sort of became the centerpiece, at least for most of my life, of the music that I liked and enjoyed and sort of ended up immersing myself in.
Wow. Now, based on what I've been reading about your work in broadcasting, you started your journey in the late 1970s at KOPN in Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah.
But it was your relocation to KBOO in Portland, Oregon, that really kind of got the blues ball rolling for you, wasn't it?
Well, I was doing an R&B and soul kind of show with blues music at KOPN. I was interviewing I had already at that point I met Sun Seals and had become friends with Sun Seals and Coco Taylor.
Okay.
I mean, they were coming through, and I did it. Well, Coco probably 4 different interviews, and Sun even more than that, and we did become real friends. So I would say the blues stuff was really happening even before in Columbia, Missouri. And so when I moved to Portland, there was, I was program director. I was program director at KOPN. I moved to Portland to be program director of KBOO. And amongst that, there was an every other week show that alternated with a blues guy. So I ended up doing that every other week. And so then I was doing a more formal blues show on the radio.
Right. Now, from there, it was off to WPFW in Washington, D.C., where you hosted the Blues Plate Special, a daily lunch program for around 6 years. You were having a blast, weren't you?
Well, yeah, except if we're doing this, I'm going to give you this time signature exactly right. I went back east in 1987. My mother became ill, and I took care of her for the last 2.5 years of her life. Okay. When I went back east, I had already had established contacts with Pacifica Radio from various community radio conferences and being involved in community radio national programming service and some things like that. So they were looking at that point, as I went back, they started looking for somebody that could produce some national programming for them out of Washington, D.C. I happened to be there. And so I reached out to them and they hired me. Initially, the very first time was that I was the producer for the Iran-Contra hearings, and Pacifica broadcast them in their entirety. There was the host and lead producer Larry Bensky and myself. A two-person team for 3.5 months, for at least 4 days a week, multiple hours every day, putting out. It was quite remarkable. And so then I started doing national programming for Pacifica. It was while I was doing that, the national programming office and the news operation, national news for Pacifica, was co-located with WPFW. Okay. I then started volunteering at WPFW also and began a weekly blues show for 3 or 4 years. And they hired a new program director, and he decided he wanted to do 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at lunchtime, a blues show. And because I was already working for Pacifica National, and he asked me would I be interested in taking that slot as a volunteer. Nice. And I was, because it was actually the very first time in almost 18 years of radio that my show wasn't just once a week. So you really had no idea who was listening, whether you were developing an audience. It was sort of chaotic, which is community radio, which is what I've been involved in almost my whole life before I got hired by XM. Mm-hmm. So I was used to the chaos. But this then gave me a chance to do a show Monday through Friday, straight across. And so they were able to measure audience for the first time of something that I was doing, as opposed to just part of sort of a whole with no individual pieces. And so I jumped at it, and I loved it. It was a bit crazy, but every day at lunchtime, I walked across the hall, went into their studio. I put on a sound effects thing. It sounded like I was in a cafeteria, and pretended I was in a cafeteria and did an hour of blues 5 days a week. And that lasted about 6 years, 94 to 99, almost probably 6-7 years. And then because of that, I got the guys at XM came across what I was doing and thought it sounded interesting, and they reached out, and eventually I got hired to work on the Blues Channel.
That's really kind of a cool program. Did you ever have any of these episodes recorded and put them out as CDs or anything?
You mean the show, the daily show, lunchtime show?
Yeah.
Well, while I was doing it, every day I brought a cassette in, an hour cassette, and stuck it in and recorded every single show. That was just sort of my own compulsive being former program director. And also I don't listen back to it, there are things that the habits and whatever you fall into. And so by listening back, so I had boxes and boxes of cassettes.
Wow.
Initially, after a while, a few years went by, I thought, oh, what am I going to do with all these cassettes? This is insane. I went through and tried to pull out any real live interviews that I had done with musicians. And so I put those aside. But there's just so my original thought was, well, we'll save them for my funeral. I told my wife, we'll save them for my funeral. And if anybody wants it, they can take some with them. So if they would like, they can listen to me on their cassette player. Well, I've lived too long because nobody has cassette player anymore. And good luck in finding anything to deal with people to deal with any kinds of cassettes. So we did a major remodel of the house a couple of 3 or 4 years ago. And one of the guys working on the house, I was getting ready to throw out a bunch of those cassettes. It was just, there's no place for them. Was no real interest. It's just, and they were overwhelming. I mean, how many of these things do you have? It was, to me, it was like, I did this, I lived this, I did this. So he was interested, so I just gave them all to him. So some of the interview cassettes I still have downstairs, but just the ones of me sitting in a room and spinning records, those are gone. In technology, I don't even have a cassette player myself any longer.
I have a cassette deck sitting right there. I can see it about 15 feet from where I'm sitting. Oh man, that breaks my heart. As somebody who worked in radio for 15 years, it breaks my heart to hear that those are gone just because of the posterity factor of it. That would be so cool to hear some of that stuff. But Bill, I want to turn the page, man. I'm gonna try to turn this sadness into joy here. I would love to hear about the offer that came to you to leave terrestrial radio, as it were, to program the new upstart satellite station that became BB King's Bluesville. How did that all come together, and what year did that happen?
Well, we've already talked about it. I'm doing this daily show in Washington, D.C.
Yes, sir.
And XM all of a sudden announces, this company named XM announces they're coming to Washington. That's going to be their home base. I had no idea. There was a group already in Washington called World Space, and they were co-working with them. And I knew a little bit about World Space, but the whole thing, I was in non-commercial radio, community radio. I was not clued in, locked into anything to do with any of that. But in Washington, my little 1-hour show was somewhat popular, and there were eventually enough people listened that some people paid attention. So this local bar magazine called the Barstool, what was the thing called? The Barstool something. And it was one of those things where they put it out every month, and they got ads from all the bars in the city. And so it was basically, it sat in bars and people to advertise their various drink specials and everything else. But they needed some kind of copy. So one of the guys calls up and said, I really like your show. Can I come down and do an interview? We'll put it into the Barstool magazine. So I said, sure. Sure, come on down. So he came down, and we sat around and talked for about 2 hours. And 3.5 months later, he calls me up and says, well, the issue's getting ready to come out, and you got a picture of you on the cover, and the interview's in there. And so I get an issue, and it's like 40 pages, 50 pages, and all of it is ads except for this interview with me So the idea was, if you read the interview, you had to turn from page to page. So they spread it out over most of the 40 pages. They didn't have to, but it was just so that the people they wanted would look at all their daggone ads. I was sort of the
that's a great approach, man. That's
I was sort of the bait and switch. So they put it out. One of the guys in charge of programming was at a bar from XM. Was at a bar, and he was waiting for some friends, and he looked over, and there was one of these things there, and he picked it up, and he started reading about the show I did, and he thought to himself, this is the kind of cat we're looking for to do stuff we want to do at XM. So he reached out based on this article, this thing, and they called me in, had a long interview with them. The first thing I did is said, look, I don't know anything really about this. It seems a little strange, though. I mean, people can get to radio any way they want. I do radio myself. I mean, I'm not clear to me how many people are really going to pay for this kind of service. And so the guy, Dave Logan, looks at me and he goes, dude, did you ever think you were going to pay for water? And I went, no, out of prayer. I really usually don't pay for water anyway, but I understood exactly what he was saying. So I said, sure, I'll listen. And ultimately, they made me a very incredibly legitimate offer. They hired two of us initially to be in charge of the Blues Channel, a guy out of the West Coast called Bubba Jackson, and myself. About 8 months in, after they hired us, there was a reorganization of the company. About a third of the company was let go. And unfortunately, Bubba was let go and I was left to then continue and finish the development and do B.B. King's Bluesville. Originally, it was just Bluesville. B.B. King was not involved at all.
Okay.
And so most of the hires they did for XM came out of commercial radio. But the interesting thing is they didn't want him to be commercial radio. The philosophy behind the guy behind the philosophy of the programming, which is a guy named Lee Abrams, told us that think of it like baseball. You have 10 ideas. If 7 of them crash and burn, no big deal. If 3 of them are successful, you're batting 300. That's great. So they were constantly encouraging these commercial radio people who had been so tightly tied down and buttoned down that they literally had to almost retrain some of them to open themselves back up. And I, on the other hand, came from chaos. So the idea of, hey, we're going to give you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to program blues, and you can do anything you want with it. I mean, conceptualize whatever you want. This is a huge company that's willing to stand behind it. We have this amazing live studio right across the hall from you, and you can bring any and all blues acts that you want to come in, and we will record them in incredibly professional. It was beyond a dream. It was
no kidding.
It was incredible. And so off we went. And we developed a philosophy. I mean, the idea was that the people we wanted to appeal to the most with our programming was the musicians. The belief was that if the musicians really liked what we were doing and really appreciated it and wanted to get behind it, then the rest will fall in line. The fans will be there and everything else. It'll all work. And so we were very geared to that. If a band came through town, a musician came through town, and they were willing to come in, they would come in. They might bring in the band in the morning and record 5 tracks in this incredibly beautiful studio. And then the band leader or one of the members would sit with me in the afternoon, and we'd do 2 or 3 hours live on the radio. They would give me a list of their favorite songs. We would play them. They would talk about their favorite songs, and then we would talk about their career and whatever else you wanted to sit and talk with a musician. But it was like 2 or 3 hours, and so very stretched out. Again, 3 hours. I have 24 hours a day to fill. It was like. At one time I had a conversation with Duke Robillard, and a number of years ago he released a record called Bluesarama. And one of the cuts on it was, I believe it's 13 minutes long or something like that.
Wow.
And where Duke does all kinds of, he plays different styles of different guitarists. So here's Albert King, and all of a sudden he plays, you think you're listening to Albert King, and then there was Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's 13 minutes long. My audience loved it. I started playing it. Duke, I had a conversation. Duke says, I didn't think anyone would play it. Who's going to play 13 minutes? I said, Duke, 13 minutes is long. It's perfect. I got all this time to fill 13 minutes means it's great. I mean, if it's good 13 minutes, now don't get me,
Sure, yeah.
and it was. So it was, like I said, it was totally unique. It was totally wonderful. And it was 12 years, and the last 2 or 3 years got to be a little iffy because Sirius started to take over, and their vision was very different from XM's vision. Their vision was very button down, back to button down radio, strict playlists. I remember the conversation at one point after I'd been with them for a couple, 3 or 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden they announced no channel should have more than 700 songs in their active rotation. And I go in their office. They said, what are you crazy? What are you talking about? I got categories that have 2,500 songs in them. And maybe about 700 songs in the whole playlist. That's not. If it's the Bluesville that's never going to happen. I can't program that way. And ultimately, after a couple more years of sort of push and pull, they win. It was their channel. I mean, they own the company. I always knew that in radio, you're hired to be fired. And that's all. Yeah. But for 12 and a half years, by and large, we recorded. I went back and thought it and tried to pick out some information because I thought you might ask something about this. I mean, if we have time, I don't know what your time constraints are here.
By all means.
We ended up recording over 1,400 live tracks in 12 and a half years.
Holy cow. That's cool.
Everybody and anybody, I mean, Johnny Winter, Jimmy Vaughn, B.B. King, Bonnie Raitt, Irma Thomas, Mavis Staples, Taj Mahal, but also people that were like just getting started and were only known in their own community. One of the amazing things I discovered once I started doing this channel was it's nationwide. And so that had never happened in the blues world.
Right.
Never. And so I had been a program director and knew doing radio, but in a single community, not in, I mean, the reason we called it Bluesville is we wanted to pretend that the whole country was this little town where the blues,
right.
Try to get away from that. But in reality, all of a sudden, musicians from all these cities, Mudcat in Atlanta, Bill Sheffield in Atlanta, all these wonderful musicians that have been playing either locally or regionally, some of them for decades, never had an outlet to get any further. And they were really, really great musicians, really, really great players. Boom, here's Bluesville. I'm looking for material. I don't want it just to be rooted in the past. And I'm not interested in it just being what the record companies and by and large were giving me as blues. I knew there was more. I'd been involved in the scene for many years. But I had no idea the depth so even cherry picking all these communities, just one band out of them, the very best. People thought I knew what I was doing. In reality, it was incredibly fertile. You couldn't go wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I got the credit. I get credit from people for certain things, but it would be difficult to go wrong because nobody had ever had the opportunity to do this and have this unless you literally made the big jump and you became a Bonnie Raitt or Stevie Ray Vaughan. But those were so far and few between. That's not the heart and soul of the blues every night out there working it, or even every weekend out there working it. So all of a sudden there's this woman named Ruthie Foster in Texas on this label called Blue Corn. And I think it was her second record. Comes across my desk and I go, holy mackerel, where the heck did this person come from? This is such a great, unbelievable singer. I put it on the air. The audience goes nuts. They think it really, I happen to be the conduit. I mean, I understand that role, but the reality was there was so much talent and it had been untapped and hadn't had the opportunity. So for 12 years, I just sort of turned the spigot on and it just flowed and it was great.
That is so cool. Now, I need to step back for just a second.
Sure.
Were you responsible for adding BB King to the BB King's Bluesville? Was that
Okay.
yours?
So I'll tell you the story. I'll try to shorten it a little, at least a little.
No, you're fine, man. Just you're good.
Um, Unbeknownst to me, first of all, BB King loved technology. And anytime he heard about anything that was new in technology, I mean going all the way back, whether it was speaker cabinets, it doesn't matter. BB had to have it and have it before anyone else. He was really into and was really important to him. So none of us knew. But he heard about satellite radio, and almost as soon as it came out, he got it and put it in his bus. And so while he was out there, he would be listening. 3 years later, we've been on the air now for 3 years. And his club in New York is having a 3-year anniversary celebration. And we get an invite from them if there was somebody from the company would like to come up and be at the celebration, whatever. And the head of programming Lee calls me and says, well, I'm not going to use it, but were you interested? And I said, oh, absolutely. I'll go to New York. No problem. It's a train ride up. I'll hop on the train. So my wife and I go up, and BB is going to be playing some of the night, but there are a lot of other musicians that are also playing to honor him in the 30th anniversary of the club, folks that had played already in the club over the first 3 years. Wonderful evening. BB's manager comes out, he brings out a cake, BB blows out candles, he's his usual, his gracious, interesting self, and the show ends. And I get up to go up because Chris Thomas King was one of the guys on the show, and I knew Chris very well, so I wanted to go up and say hello. And all of a sudden, BB King's manager comes walking by me, and I had seen him on stage, so I said, what the hell, what I got to lose? And I go, excuse me, Mr. Lieberman, have you got a minute real quick? My name's Bill Wax. I do a Sirius XM satellites Bluesville channel, and I was hoping to talk to you about possibly talking to BB King. And he goes, nah, I don't believe you. Straight, deep New York accent, just the nasty, wonderful New York thing. It just so happens my mother was born in the Bronx, so I was used to the whole New York style. I said, well,
okay.
Mr. Lieberman, what do you want me to say? I am him. I do the channel, and all of a sudden it dawns on him. He hears my voice, and he goes, wow, you are him. We listen to your show. BB listens all the time. And meantime, I'm like, my head's exploding. He says, can you wait around? BB's going to want to meet you. And I'm going, yeah, sure, I can wait around. No problem. So he had to finish up something with an Italian TV thing. They go wait. And every night after a BB King concert, and this was every night, and as the 10 years I knew him, all the time, after the show was over, people could come back and stream through and meet and talk to BB King, have a picture taken with him. If they brought some records they wanted autographed, BB would autograph every one.
Yes,
it could be anywhere from 40 to 150, depending on, but he did it every single night. So it brings me back into the little green room. He goes, there's some people here waiting to see BB, but don't worry. So he brings me back, he puts me in a little room, and he goes, B, there's somebody here I think you're going to want to meet. This is the guy that does that channel you listen to on the radio. So I'm getting ready to say, Mr. King, it's a real, and BB gets up out of his chair, walks up to me, he goes, son, I've been wanting to meet you for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm gobsmacked. I mean, and I just looked at him and I go, Mr. King, this is all wrong. I'm supposed to say that to you, not you say that to me. And he just bursts out laughing. He says, if you got some time, I'd like you to sit down here next to me, you and your wife, and we can talk while these people come through and I sign autographs and pictures. I said, sure. I'll sit wherever you like. And so we sat there for about 45 minutes.
Wow.
It was clear he had been listening almost as soon as we had been on the air. He was really into some of the stuff we had set up, like the top 10 commandments of Bluesville. I mean, shtick, stuff that just to entertain people. And he really, and eventually he says to me, and I got to say, the other day, I almost started crying because all of a sudden I heard Bucka White, my cousin, on the radio. He goes, I've never heard Bucka White, my cousin, while I was listening on the radio ever in my whole life. He goes, sometimes driving down the road, I hear people there, they're long gone, but there was never an opportunity to hear any of them on the radio. And it's like, again, reaffirms once again, and man, how lucky am I? I get to do this thing, and it really is,
yes,
in some aspects, a remarkable thing. So it's clear we're having fun. BB's enjoying talking to me, but 45 minutes have gone by. There's still some more people. I didn't want to overstay my welcome. My mom said it was always better to get out before they throw you out. So my wife and I say, hey, this has been a great evening. Hopefully next time you come to Washington, we'll get a chance to talk. Goodbyes, and we leave. And so I send a note to Floyd the next week and say, hey, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I see that BB's coming into town in 4 months. And so I start to, hey, look, BB's going to be in town. Would he be willing to come in and join me on the radio? And lo and behold, yeah, BB'd love to do it. He'll be in. How long do you want? I said, well, about an hour, maybe. They go, sure, we can get him in there for an hour. And so lo and behold, BB walks into my studio. We sit there. I do an hour with him. We have a wonderful time. I had already asked him a couple of questions about some of his favorites, and I knew Bucka, and so we played that. And it was a wonderful hour. BB leaves. He goes back. Floyd calls me and says, BB called. He said, has had a great time. He wants to know when he can come back. So I said, well, when's the next time he's coming in? And so it's 6 months go by, and BB's coming back in. And this time I talked to XM about, I want to make BB the mayor of Bluesville for the next 50 years. A proclamation. And so we find somebody in the company that can do all that fancy print and make a proclamation. And we literally write a proclamation saying that BB King is the mayor of Bluesville for the next 50 years. We frame it. He comes in, usual friendship. Let me just say, he is the most gracious man I have ever met. I've met a lot of people now. By the most gracious man, one of the nicest men I had ever met. Just absolutely remarkable. So he comes in friendly, whatever. He sits down, and I give him the proclamation and show him the thing. And he is just heads over heels tickled about it. He just, I'm the mayor of Bluesville. Does that mean I can make some proclamations? We can have some. You're the mayor. You can do whatever you want. So we do a 2-hour interview that time. And he's having just a jolly old time. He leaves. A couple of weeks later, he's in Sweden. I think it's Sweden. It might have been, I think it's Sweden. And the King of Sweden gives him a special commendation and award for his lifetime of achievements and what he's done to be an ambassador of the music. And afterwards, there's a press conference. And the press asks him about awards and things that he's gotten in his life. And he goes, well, I've met 3 popes and 2 presidents. Maybe it was 3 presidents and a king, and I'm the mayor of Bluesville. And I'm like, oh, me. BB King is. It's beyond anything I could have imagined. I'm on heads. I immediately, next morning, I take the whole thing into the office, into the head of the company, said, have you seen this? Did you see? So they then decide we should try to see if we can work out something with BB King and his people. So while they were doing that, we had BB King in a third time. This time I convinced him, because he was the mayor, he should be making statement and taking calls from his constituency. So he came in and sat on the air for 3 hours with me and took phone calls
Oh
from
my gosh.
the audience. Totally
I love
on
it.
screen. Hello, you're listening, talking to BB, the mayor, BB King in Bluesville, and they would talk and ask questions. BB would 3 hours.
Wow.
It was just amazing, and he had a ball. He was having so much fun, and it was just great to see him light up and have so much fun with all that. So eventually, they cut a deal with them, and the deal was to do a minimum of 40 1-hour shows with BB King, as well as we got rights to a couple of live shows if we wanted to do that, and
Sure.
some others, and his name and likeness for 10 years. I don't need to tell people how much he got for it. He got paid decently, but he didn't ask for arms and legs or nothing else. He really wanted to do this.
Yeah.
I later believed that the reason he wanted to do it is he realized where he was in terms of how old and what was going on. And
Yes.
he wanted one last time to tell his story, and the way he saw the story, the way he wanted it told. And he realized that Bluesville and myself would be a conduit for that, would allow him the opportunity for that. And so BB was a very, very smart man. He may not have been completely book educated in that. Ate at him a lot, but man, he was very, very smart and was very aware. And don't ever think that people were manipulating him. All the way to the end, BB King was in charge. I don't remember but there were stories about this and that.
Right.
What I saw was none of that. BB King he stayed on the road because BB King wanted to be on the road because he had all these people he was taking care of, 9-10 pieces in his band, the BB King organization, some family that he wanted to make sure they had some money. It wasn't somebody running him out there to make money off of BB King. Okay, I'm off that soapbox. So anyway, 41-hour shows. So XM had done the show with Bob Dylan. They were in the middle of doing a show with Bob Dylan, a similar kind of deal. Bob Dylan come in. Well, the way the Bob Dylan show worked was Bob Dylan and his people laid down all the tracks in their own studios. They shipped those tracks to XM. XM assembled the tracks and then added the music. So I assumed, okay, cool. BB's people, he's got people. They'll put together and they'll send the stuff. So 2 weeks before I'm supposed to go out to Vegas, because that's where BB lives, not in a giant mansion, sort of middle class, gated community, because it's Vegas and things are sometimes, but very honest, inauspicious. You had no idea that you were at BB King's house when you pulled up. Was none of that. So before I go out there, I call his people and I said, so what are we doing for the show? What are the ideas? What do you think? And they go, oh, we got nothing. We got nothing. That's you. You're going to do that, right? You're the radio guy, right? You're doing all this. And I'm going, what do you mean you got nothing? That's me. And then I realized, of course it is. BB isn't. He's on the road. He's not there thinking about his radio show. And the rest of that team, I fast realized they were set up to help BB get out there and get to his concert, but they weren't really other stuff. So get on an airplane with an engineer. We fly out to BB's house. We get out there the night before. At noon, we show up at his house. It's clear he hasn't been up too me. Comes down, he has breakfast. We sit at his dining room table, and we set up a mic in front of him and a mic in front of me. And I go, all right, B, what are we going to do? We have 41-hour shows. He said, well, what do you think? I said, well, how about if we have a segment where you pick out an artist and you play 3 or 4 of your favorite songs by that artist and you talk about those songs and we talk about that artist. And I said, maybe we call it your playlist. He goes, yeah, great, we'll do that. He said, maybe we have another segment where you and I do an interview and we talk about different aspects of your history and different times and things. And the 40 shows, we'll try to do it sequential, but Yeah, that's good. We'll do that too. So eventually he came up with enough ideas and BB liked them. And so after that, it was no prep. I would come out with a list of names. Hey, this week we got flying out. We need enough shows. We do enough recording for 4 or 5 shows. So I'd come back the next month. We'd sit there from noon to 6 one day. I'd come back the next day. We sit there from noon to 6 the second day and record. He and I sitting at a mic. Playlists. So, for instance, I might say, and I'll use this one because there's a story also with it. How about BB? How about Billie Holiday, BB? Oh, yeah, I loved Billie. And he would tell me a couple of stories. He met Billie, knew whatever. And says, okay, what songs you want to play? And he picked the songs off the top of his head. We wouldn't listen to him again for him to refresh himself. No, I would say, okay, so here's your 3 songs for the first set. And I said, so it's going to be this one, and this one. I said, okay, now we come back, we played those 3 songs, and now we're going to talk about it. And he would talk about it as if we just listened to those 3 songs at that moment. He had no idea who I was going to bring up from week, month, session to session, time to time, all off the top of his head. Complete, in control, remarkable.
Wow.
So the Billie Holiday thing was God Bless the Child. Body and Soul, and he also picked Strange Fruit. Now, I had already been out there like 3 or 4 times, so I had established, and I knew that this was more than just a working relationship. He liked me, and we were. So I said, God, he picked Strange Fruit. I'd really like to ask him about if he had any experience with the offshoots of lynchings while he was going through South. I said, can I ask that? I mean, this is happening in my head. I mean, while in real time, we're sitting there and I'm going, I said, what the hell? The worst he can say is, no, Bill, I don't want to talk about that. And we cut that out and we move on. So I asked him, and he goes, and he gives me a really wonderful answer. And he talks about how, of course, he never saw a lynching, but once in his life as a kid, they would go to school through this back way, and there was a big tree over a holler, and there was a stream underneath it. And one day the kids came through, and there were 2 young men hanging from the tree that had obviously been hung the night before and left there, and the kids. So he saw them. And then he talked about a couple of times he and the band would come into a town to play the next day, but the day before there'd been a hanging, and there'd be people hanging in the town square.
Jeez.
So, I mean, incredibly powerful, but very honest. So we had, I asked him a little bit about it. We talked about, of course, Strange Fruit. That's the Strange Fruit. That's what it's about. But it was that kind of stuff. And it was all right off the top. And it was all 41 hours, 40 shows when it was all over 1 hour. I've been in radio for 48 years. In no uncertain terms, it's the best radio I've ever done. We won a Polk Award for the Iran-Contra hearings, which is I was very honored and everything else, but the BB King shows were just amazing. And most of the time I sat in that dining room table with him and pinched myself, thinking to myself, they're paying me to do this. I get a paycheck to sit here and talk with BB King and do this.
Totally get it, man.
For free. Yeah.
Totally get it. I totally get it.
They're paying me. The other thing that came along with that is once word got out that we were doing this with BB and we started putting the shows on the air. Well, that whole idea originally, the idea behind the channel was musicians liked the channel. Well, musicians were listening to the channel, and all of a sudden here come these interviews with BB King.
Yeah.
And BB treated me so wonderfully, like a really dear old friend, and so all of a sudden, I'm a dear old friend to every one of those musicians. I'm like, at BB's, it sort of touched the hem of his garment. BB blessed you. You're golden, brother. You can go anywhere. James Cotton, James Cotton, the wife, tells me that every Friday, when we're running the show on Fridays from 6 for an hour Friday afternoons, James Cotton, if they were home, would insist that they get up, go out to the car, sit in the car, turn on the radio, and listen to the hour show of the whatever episode of BB King, You and Me with BB
No
King.
kidding.
And then he would start thinking about and telling her stories that she had never heard, she didn't know, because he got reminded by something BB said. So when I met James Cotton, it was like I was his long lost brother or something. It was swell. It was wonderful. None of this is, like I said, I lived a dream. I mean, incredibly charmed. Eventually, Buddy Guy was the same way. I mean, he was wonderful with me and for me. And at one point, he and BB were on tour together. And I said, take a shot at it. And I called up and I said, hey, can I get BB and Buddy to come into the studio together and do an interview with the two of them together? And both their management they said, well, I don't think they got to sleep during the afternoons. They got to rest. They got a big show at night. So I sort of put the word out to them separately. And the next thing you know, I'm getting a call back. They want to do it. We're doing it. I said, but you got to promise me it's only going to be an hour. You won't promise you're only going to. I said, sure. We'll only talk. I'll take them for whatever I can get them an hour. Fine. So they came in. We sit in the studio. We get to the hour mark. It is clear that BB and Buddy have no intentions of getting up and walking away. They're having way too much fun telling stories, talking about times, and they're friends, but they never see each other. They're on the road all the time. If they see each other, it's hit and miss for just a couple of minutes. Here it is. So the handlers are on the other side of the glass window, and they're jumping up and down in an hour. You got to get them out. I'm like ignoring them. BB and Buddy there's no way they're leaving. Another hour and 10 minutes goes by, and finally, okay, and the handlers were just fuming. They were but BB and Buddy came out and was like, yo, let's go away, stop. This is what we do. This was great. So I ended up, that was 3-1, and we turned that 2 hour thing in with music, 3 hours of the two of them in the interview and me sitting there. So, I mean, it's just all kinds of things like that. I mean, and it wasn't just BB. I mean, BB was part of it, but for instance, Johnny Winter. Do you have time for this? Am I?
Go, man, go. Yes, I have. I will make time for you, buddy.
Johnny Winter. Johnny Winter's management at one point before his last management really had Johnny on really heavy drugs. Johnny had a serious drug problem anyway. They had him really totally overwhelmed on methadone and other stuff, and Johnny was almost catatonic. And for a longest time, they had to hire babysitters to stay up all night with Johnny, because Johnny stayed up all night, make sure someone was there with him. But when Johnny discovered Bluesville, he loved the channel so much they didn't have to have a babysitter. Johnny stayed up all night and just listened to Bluesville. Wow. Now, again, I knew nothing about any of this. Johnny's former manager fell downstairs and died. And then his wife, very soon after, she also died. I'm not going there about stories or anything about them. That's someone else's job. Sure. But then a guy that was playing with Johnny at that point, Paul Nelson, took over and started helping Johnny and eventually managing Johnny. That eventually took a weird saying a decade later. But so to get Johnny back out on the wall, Paul starts lowering his methadone dose each month. And so over a period of time, he's taking less until he's not taking any. So they're on the road. They're playing in Annapolis. I get a phone call from Paul Nelson. Hey, I'm Paul Nelson. I play guitar, and I'm helping manage Johnny Winter. And Johnny'd like to come down to Bluesville. And I didn't know. Said, great, I'd love to have Johnny Winter come down. My wildest dreams, I never thought I'd be getting calls from people like Johnny Winter wanting to come to the radio rather than me calling them. So they pull up, they bring Johnny in, and it is clear that this is going I'm glad this is not going to be a live interview. And honestly, we talked for about 20 minutes, and Johnny could at best answer yes and no, and almost nothing else to questions. So we get finished with it all, and they get ready to drive away, and Paul comes into me, and I said, Paul, I don't want you to be upset with me, but I can't use this interview. I said, I can't put this on the air. People can't, I can't do this to Johnny. It's embarrassing. I'm happy to do it with Johnny. I had fun, but I'm not going to use it. He goes, man, I'm so glad you're telling me this, because I was coming in to talk to you about, hey, man, we can't air that interview. He said, I would never do that to an artist like Amy. So 6 months later, I get another call. Hey, we're playing in Annapolis. Johnny wants to come back. Can you mind? I said, sure. Let's see. So this time he comes in, and Johnny's answering in sentences. He's much more aware. It's still not a great interview. And when we're finished with it, I go, Paul, this one isn't ready yet either. But if in another 6 months this continues on, I'm happy to have him come back, and let's see I think we probably are getting. Now, at this point, Johnny has decided what he wants to do is come up with songs that we don't have in our Bluesville library. So the next time he comes in, he's much more aware, and we do a real interview. And then he says, Behold, I want to play Stump the DJ. He said, sure, Johnny, what's Stump the DJ? He said, well, I got a list of your songs. I want to see if you have them. So he starts, and we had about 7 out of the 9 songs he had. And he's just like, he's having so much fun. We're playing the song. He goes, oh, I can't believe you have this with this. And off he goes, and I've got a great interview. 6 months later, Johnny's coming back. He wants to do it again. He wants to play Stump the DJ. He's had so much fun. This time, can we do it live on the radio? Well, I'm pretty sure he's okay now. I mean, he's good. So the last time we did it live on the radio, sat around for an hour. And it was very much really wonderful. I went on one of the rhythm and blues cruises, and Johnny was on there. Johnny wants me to come by and hang out. It's like wonderful. It was great. I mean, that kind of stuff was just wonderful. There are a lot of stories.
Yeah,
I had 12 and a half years.
That's amazing. And you spent 12 and a half years, which is, in my opinion, a significant part of your life building the Bluesville brand. And how, I have to ask you, having all those memories and all that work that you did, how difficult was it for you to walk away from something that you had nurtured from its inception?
That's a very fair question. There was tension between myself and the guys that were now in charge. And we talked real quickly about this, but, in radio, unless you own the station, darn well, eventually someday they're coming along and saying, oh, we were a country station for 30 years, but now we're going rock and roll tomorrow. And we don't need you. We got all new jingles, and it's all set and ready to go. Bye. Don't let the door hit you where the Lord split you on your way out. So there was this tension. I mean, for 11 years, I got to do whatever I wanted, even a couple of years when Sirius took over, partially because BB was still alive. And I know darn well they didn't want to make BB angry or me say something to BB that was going to look bad to them. So they just let me go and let me continue to do what I was doing.
Mayor of Bluesville, right?
So, but eventually the screws started tightening. And, for instance, why are you announcing gigs for artists all over the country? If I live in California, what do I care if Tommy Castro's playing in New York? It's like, dudes, it's not New York. It's not California. They're playing in Bluesville. You can't believe how many listeners call me or drop me an email and say, man, I heard you say that Tommy's playing in New York. My cousin lives in New York. He's never seen Tommy. I was able to text him and tell him to go see him. That's the reason why Jamokes. It's because, and again, for the musicians, get the word out where they're playing. People show up at their shows. They say, hey, where'd you hear about it? On Bluesville. It's, before we had anything, Buddy, I get at one point I get a call, Buddy Guy's out on the road, and in every show he tells the audience that radio is crap, that you should be listening to XM Bluesville. It's the only place to get real blues. I had no idea. We didn't have any deal with Buddy. That was purely because Buddy liked what was going on. So, ending this all. So I basically it was just a remarkable thing, but there was tension, and it got more and more because they didn't understand what I was doing. They thought the only thing wrong with commercial radio was commercials, that a playlist of 500 songs and playing it over and over week after week after week, the audience loves it. They can't hear their favorite song enough. It's like, all right. So there was that. The second thing is I came into a health issue. I got diagnosed with a form of leukemia. Now, as it turned out, the form was one where, honestly, there was breaking science in the past few years before that they developed a pill. Instead of having to go and get the blood stuff, you took this pill every day. Well, I started taking the pill, and I was on it for 10 years. It put the leukemia in remission, but there were side effects. It was a powerful kind of thing. And some days I was really tired. Some days I was nauseous. I mean, there were things. I had been working at Bluesville 60, 70 hours a week for about 12 years, 11 and a half years. And so I knew that I couldn't keep working at that pace. So I went to them and said, I've got this diagnosed with this leukemia. I don't want to walk away, but I would like to cut back. I said, I'm even willing to give you some of my salary back and maybe you can use it. We hire somebody to do some of the stuff for me, so I'm not so many hours and whatever. And they said, okay, well, let's talk about it. We'll get back to you. 2 months go by and I haven't heard anything from them. So I go to HR and I go, hey, 2 months, I haven't heard anything. Shouldn't I know something? So 2 days later, I have a meeting with them, and the programming people come down and tell me, well, here's what we'd like. We want you to voice track for us. We'll pay you $110 for every block of programming every 4 hours or 6 hours of programming that you voice track. And that's all you're not going to be choosing music. You won't be doing interviews with artists. So what they really wanted was to keep me on and my voice, and then make all these changes to the channel so that all of a sudden all this music I've been playing disappears. It becomes a really much more narrow. Their vision was much more rocking blues. It was not my vision. There was a place for rocking blues. I don't mean to say that there isn't. I had a show called Stone Blue every week. It ran 3 times a week, 2 hours of rocking blues. We also, almost every time I had a top 15 countdown called the Rack of Blues. And so it was a way for me to feature new music, which was another important thing I wanted to make sure we were doing with Bluesville. And so I made sure that we also, something out of the Stone Blue playlist would show up in the Rack of Blues. So that, and people like Joe Bonamassa, they were part of the playlist. They weren't dominating, but they were part of the playlist. Well, their vision was very different. They wanted way more of that down the road and way less of the old guys, way less of the people that were a little peculiar and might have been a little offbeat, maybe only somewhat influenced by the blues, but are writing really cool tunes or whatever, the kind of stuff that I would put on there. So basically they said, we just want you to voice track and we'll pay $120 for however many hours it was. So I said, no, I don't think that's, I'll think about this, but I don't think that. So another month goes by and they finally call me back, and I said, I don't understand why you're doing this. Can't we find somewhere in the middle? I mean, I got all the skills. I've developed the channel. We got 3 million listeners a week to the channel. No, that's all we want. So in the middle of that meeting, I just looked at him and I just went, you know what, guys? I'm 66. I don't have to work if I don't need to. It's your channel. You do what you want. I'm gone. I'll be back this weekend to get to all this, whatever my stuff is around my desk that I've accumulated, and best of luck. And I left. They were, my brother-in-law said, "You were crazy. You had a lawsuit in terms of yada yada." I said, "Brian, I didn't want to deal with that. Didn't." It was like it was clear they weren't interested in what I had done or where we had gone or what the vision was, and so it was time for me to move on. And it was,
Wow.
what I regret. 12 and a half years, I had started to plan I was going to have a Bluesville bar mitzvah. And
I love it. I love it.
I mean, special programming, and there's so much interaction between blues artists and Jewish business owners, Jewish blues players. There's a ton. There is a natural symmetry to it. So I thought it would really be fun. It would be a little political in some ways and be a way to play with some stuff that I was interested in trying to promote and sort of find ways to build bridges and people. But we never got to do that because 12 and a half years, we didn't get to have the service.
Well,
so that's the answer. That's the answer to that question. That's how that came about. I mean, it's like, business.
It's amazing to me, and I have to tell you, I have some friends. Sonny Blue and the Moons are a band from Michigan, and they absolutely love Rack of Blues. As a matter of fact, they've been on Rack of Blues on the top 15 now. I think they've been there 6 weeks, and when this was being recorded, they were at number 3 this last week with 2 glasses of whiskey on ice. That's the cut. But
right, I've heard the song in the air.
I know that people like them appreciate the fact that you started that program, because it's a great way for these new bands, bands to get out there and to get some recognition, and they're reaping the benefits from it. But
so the whole thing behind that, there's nothing new in radio. You just wait for ideas. You hear something. If you wait long enough, you bring it back a decade or two later, everyone's forgotten. It sounds like it's brand new. So, for instance, the Rack of Blues is a slogan I heard a long time ago. And also calling brand new music picks the click, which is what we called it. So it wasn't just brand new artists. Taj Mahal, Paul has a new album. We're going to pick off some songs that we want to focus on and feature. So I chose the term from 30 years ago and called them picks to click, just brought it back. No one had heard it for a really long time. All of a sudden, I heard guys on SportsCenter using the term picks to click, not for music, but for, I'm going, like, that can't be. I mean, it's got to be because they heard it, or someone heard it on Bluesville, because no one else. But the idea, so what people should understand is there's no measurement behind the order of picks to click and going up and down the order. Absolutely none. It's purely who's ever in charge is moving those, whatever songs they want up or down. That's what I did. New music came out. I had a special rotation so that new music got played new songs got played at least 3 times an hour. So over a week, you might hear someone's new tune, if it was a pick to click, 7, 8, 9 times during the week, which was a lot in terms of how I programmed.
Sure.
So it would get airplay, because I believed an audience needed to hear a song more than a couple of times before they decided whether they liked it or not. It's not
absolutely.
So that was all based on the way I used to listen to radio decades ago. There was no science. I didn't have any science. It's just the way it seemed to work for those guys then. I said, let's try it here. If it didn't work, like I said, bat 300. It's an idea that didn't work. No problem. Try another one. Run it into it. So that's what picked the click. So just someone got the number one. It wasn't necessarily that they had more requests than anyone else that week. It was just whatever rotation the program director, who's now Brian Beto, I believe, is who's in charge there now, is doing. But no, a blues artist never had a number one hit. It was fun for those artists. I wasn't going to sit there and say, we're making this. No, sure. Why can't it be number one? Bluesville is the place where it's getting played. We're calling it a number one hit, or they're in the top 10. Absolutely, they should get that recognition. They could get that kind of positive feedback. That's what it was all about. And we tried any number of ways to manipulate that and push that forward. Now, when I left Sirius, I had wanted to take You and Me with BB King off the air because we had been running it continually for about 4 years, and it was starting to burn out. I was getting letters from all listeners that going, if I have to hear BB King talk about such and such one more time, I went, man, I don't want this. Can't be his legacy. It needs to rest. Let me take it off for 6 months. They refused. They said I could absolutely not do that. The day I left, they removed BB King's You and Me with BB King for 4 years. Now they brought it back, or even longer, 6 years or something, just disappeared it off the air. They also wanted me to change. They didn't want any more Picks to Click. They didn't want any more of the Front Porch. I left. There is still Picks to Click. I've been gone for 13 years. There is still the Front Porch. There is still Stone Blue. All these things that they were yammering at me about, they never changed. And so the format, they've made some changes. They're playing, like I said, they're playing stuff more frequently than I would play it, certain stuff, and they've cut out a lot of stuff that I was looking for to put in there. But that's different vision, different manager. They get to make the calls, and that's the nature. Yep. I'm just glad I got the chance to make the calls for the years that I was there.
Yes, sir. Well, Bill, what are you doing these days to keep yourself busy, man? Any new projects on the back burners? What's going on?
So I do a weekly radio show for a community station I was at in Washington, D.C. before I went to XM. I do a Saturday show from 2 to 4. The station is WPFW. On the internet, it's WPFWFM.org, and it's 2 to 4 East time in the afternoon. It's called Roots and Fruits. It comes from the slogan, the quote from Willie Dixon, where he said, the blues is the roots and everything else is the fruits. So the idea is, they said, I wanted to do a show. They said, well, we could really use the blues show. And I said, well, I'm willing to do some blues, but I'd like to make it broader than that. And they've been kind enough to let me have my head. So that's what it is. Why not? I might as well announce this here as anywhere. I'm getting ready there's a book getting ready to go out that I have helped co-author. And a lot of people have asked me about writing a book, and most of them would have wanted a book about telling stories about artists and experiences with the musicians and stuff. Sure. This one isn't quite like that. I taught high school before I went into radio. For about 5 or 6 years, I taught English. That was 50 years ago or so. About 6 months ago or so, 2 kids that were former students of mine, brothers, have now since retired, and they put out these anagram puzzle books where there's 120 puzzles in them, and you figure out the letters, and then you figure out what the quote is at the bottom. You've seen them in newspapers and everything, they have North Carolina athletics or whatever. So they reached out to me and said, hey, we do these. We've done 19. We'd like to do one on blues, and we'd like to have you make up all the puzzles.
Oh, wow.
And so you can, who the artists that you want to make puzzles for, and we'll do all the other stuff around it. And so I was thinking, I don't really want to do this. But then I realized, man, this is so sweet. I taught these kids 50 years ago, and here they are reaching out 50 years later and want to do this thing with me. How can I possibly say no? However it turns out, whatever it is, how could I possibly say no? I was honored, honestly. I was really, so I said, sure, let's do it. So we've done it. I'd hope today I could hold it up to you and show it to you, because the second proof was supposed to be here today, but it isn't here yet, so that can't happen. But it will be coming out eventually, and it's it's just a fun thing. If you're stuck in an airport, it's the perfect book to have for you if you like the blues. And it's about the folks that are in the Hall of Fame of the blues. It's about the history of the blues, not the contemporary scene so much. But so that's
cool.
Those two things. I'm involved with the community radio with WPF probably pretty deeply. There's a lot going on. These are strange times, and so there's a lot going on there. I can find plenty to keep myself busy. And honestly, one of the things I've learned in retirement, I'm really great at doing nothing. It's one of I didn't realize how much skill I had at doing nothing. And so this works in a lot of ways. And I get calls from musicians a lot, and they may have questions about something. Most often it's, hey, who's in charge down at Bluesville now? Because I got a new song and I want to get it to them, which is fine. I haven't been there in 12 years, but you hear stuff or whatever. So where I can help, I can help. So that's always good for me. So I go out to music. It's good. Baseball games. We got the Nats here. Not very good, but at least we got them. So it's all good.
Right on. Well, Bill Wax, I want to thank you for being with me today on Time Signatures, sir. I wish you all the best in your retirement and doing nothing at all, and hope to get a chance to meet up with you one day. I really
absolutely, me too, and I can't wait to listen and see the podcast.
Yes, sir. Well, before we close this episode, I want to talk to you all about the Blues Foundation located in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
The Blues Foundation preserves blues heritage, celebrates blues recording and performance, expands worldwide awareness of the blues, and ensures the future of this uniquely American art form. The Blues Foundation is responsible for the International Blues Challenge, held each year on Beale Street, the annual Blues Music Awards in May, and the Blues Hall of Fame. Celebrating 45 years, and they're just getting started. To make a tax-deductible donation, please go to blues.org today, then click the donation button on the top right and make your donation. And as always, thank you so much for your consideration. And that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. I want to thank my esteemed guest, Bill Wax, but I also want to thank you, for without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues, one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.